So, let's do it.
Good morning, Austin. Good morning, Texas. Good morning, North America. Good morning, planet Earth. What's happening out there? This is Robert Phoenix coming at you live from South Central Texas with another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Here's my effects. In the next lifetime, I want to be a Leo. I want to be about me in the next lifetime. Hey, what's happening out there? On the big stage, not a lot. We are kind of in the, we're not quite in the dog days yet. We're getting close to the dog days. Of course, dog days have to do with the planet Sirius, which we've talked about before. It's an interesting effect. We'll talk about it again as we get closer to the dog days. Woof, woof, woof. It seems to have cooled down just a tad here, meteorologically. So this is a good week to do what I was talking about yesterday. Go analog and hang with your peeps. Drink some cold beverages. If you're not into the grilling of meats, which tends to be kind of a controversial topic to some extent. I mean, there are a lot of people that are just, hey, you just stay away from the animals, don't eat the animals. And there are other people, don't go vegan. Say the plant-based diet is going to be. I'm a blood type guy. I'm an O blood type, and I have tried to, for the better part of my adult life, adhere to the O blood type. The heavy carbs are not my friend. Heavy creams are not my friend. Heavy spices, even though I love them, are not my friend. Simple, simple, simple. That is kind of where the diet thing is for me. And I do eat meat. I try not to eat a ton of it. Spread it out a little bit, but it's in the diet. That's where it's at. Hey, so, what's going on? Like I said, on the surface level, there's not a ton happening out there. There's kind of a break in the action, and I'm sure there's going to be more. We'll get, more false flags. I got a lot of interesting feedback on the false flag show on Friday. Some people didn't get it. Some people didn't understand it. Some people didn't want to hear it. And I'm sorry. Just, if you really listen to it, you would understand at a kind of a different level where I was coming from. And that there's a deeper manifestation of the false flag harvesting of energy and emotion, and which I think is for a particular reason. But if you're not going to listen to it, then you won't find out about it. I'm still going to put those links up on the show page. I'm at a point now where I'm getting ready to split up and have a new channel on YouTube. I have to explore this because I have so many radio broadcasts that are occurring there that I've got. It's starting to clog my astrological stuff. So I need to I'm going to have to separate church and state, so I'm probably going to come up with a new YouTube channel. So we'll have two of those, and all the radio stuff will then go to the new YouTube channel, and of course I'll let you know what that channel is going to be. It won't be the 11th house. That'll just be for astrology. I just went onto the YouTube page. I've been doing some stuff. I'm trying to understand more about YouTube and putting together an ad campaign for Facebook for the course. So I'm just redoing some stuff here, which is important. So we're going to get into this, and it may sound like fake news. Fake news is so February, right? But there's something about what's going on here which is really worth paying attention to. And again, I think it relates back to this bigger picture of reality, which is everything's pretty much mediated, and it's been mediated for a while. It's gotten worse. I mean, let's make no mistake about this. It has gotten worse. At some point in time, there was this ability to kind of insert yourself into the matrix in a way that was kind of interesting, unique, and a lot more free than it is today. And I've detailed some of this, like when it comes to what was going on in the 1960s, where there was, there were a lot of resources available in the 1960s. I was out in a town this weekend called Comfort, Texas, unincorporated town, Comfort. It was very interesting. And one of the things that blew my mind was there was these two women in this town, and they had this neat little store. The whole town is unincorporated, so which is, I think, kind of brilliant. I think we should all be unincorporated. It would be more engaging. Like, they take care of their own streets. They have an electronic power co-op. They have their own volunteer fire department. I mean, this is living, right? This is an interesting model for living. And unincorporation, I think, the one thing about unincorporation is you don't get any protection. So if somebody wanted to come in and really, if you wanted to do a Starbucks in Comfort, you can do it. You can do pretty much anything you want as long as you can make it work. Anyway, so there are these two women. They have this wonderful store there. And it's like every square inch of the store has something really unique and cool. It's like you just turn and go, man, this is cool, this is cool, this is cool. And then you go to another room and it's like really interesting, high-quality toys. In another room, really interesting, high-quality kitchenware. And you go to another room, really interesting spices. Like, where did you get these spices? And it's like I was marveling at this store. And then one of the women says, oh, we're a butterfly sanctuary station. I'm like, really? Wow, that's pretty cool. Butterfly Sanctuary Station. So she tells us all about it. It's not just butterflies, it's monarch butterflies. So we go out back, and there's this amazing garden, and they've got all the plants there and the flowers there for the monarch butterflies to come in and, stay and hang out and suck on the nectar and fly off to Mexico, wherever they're going. And I'm like, man, this is incredible. This is really remarkable. And then she told me about her house, and which I saw down the road, big stone house with these Chinese warriors out front, and then basically said, hey, I had to buy the whole street. So she's got, her property extends like 6 to 10 acres down the street. I forget how much. And then she told me she writes textbooks for McGraw-Hill, and she has a teacher's college, and just graduated 250 people there. And I'm like, my God, how does this person do all this? How do they put this all together? Well, this is somebody who's a baby boomer. And come to find out, her father has 40 acres of land right here in Austin, like down by Ben White and Manchac. You don't know where that is unless you're from Austin, but it's like not far. The center of Austin is encroaching outwards. It's like this red algae that's spreading across the city. And as it spreads across the city, property prices are going to skyrocket. And it's happening. And the 40 acres on Manchac, Ben White, I'm telling you right now, that is very, very valuable. Anyway, this is a person who has resources. They have resources. The baby boomers had resources. And I'm not going after the baby boomers. It was just a time where there were more available resources and there were less kinds of strictures and bylaws and systems of control. There weren't that many systems of control. What's crazy is that the kids back then were protesting about all this control and the heavy hand and the tyranny of the oppressive the oppressive state, and it was crazy. No, it wasn't really. There might have been a tad of that, but it's nothing like it is today. Trust me. Nothing. Everything is tracked. You're tracked everywhere you go. It is ubiquitous. It is a ubiquitous universe of biometric recognition. It's everywhere. Back then, it didn't exist. Did not exist. So there was a time and a place where it was easier to enter in and do something unique. And I used the Brotherhood of Eternal Love as an example before. These are the guys that pushed huge amounts of LSD during that time, and you can argue whether or not that's like the moral or correct thing to do. It was just part of the time, Who knows, they may have had their own little CIA connections. I know that they were harboring Tim Leary, but I don't think they knew Tim Leary was CIA at the time. That's my sense. Anyway, what they did was they just were crazy. They did whatever they want. They moved product however they want. They'd pack it up in a VW bus, to get hundreds of pounds of hashish and load it into a VW bus and ship it from Germany to the United States, and it'll all be packed in the wall panels. You can't do that now. And in fact, even when you get into the early 70s, around 71, 70, right around 70, 71, 72, all of a sudden now airports are exchanging information about individuals. So one of these guys shows up in Karachi in Afghanistan, and the next thing you know, they've got a picture of him, and boom, you're being taken out. So there was this kind of wide open space. From 1960 to about 1969, 1970, and after that, everything started to kind of close in. And that's what's happening now, or it's happened, trust me. So I wanted to talk about this story here. This is a really interesting story. And this gets to this whole idea about how fake news, and let's just say news has been fake for a very long time. It's been fake for a long time. I mean, we get news, and it's generally news that promotes what? It promotes either a corporate agenda or military agenda, or there's some agenda that news promotes. Rarely is news naked and raw and truthful, and when it is contracted and redacted very, very quickly. And the first time I saw this was in Gulf War I, when there was a story that CNN ran about a guy who was a soldier there, and he was really questioning the war. He was questioning the war, and he brought a saxophone. It was very, very soulful, and he was playing his saxophone on a sand dune in Kuwait. It was, wow, it's like, wow, man, this guy's got some conscience. I saw that replayed later that day, and all the questioning parts had been taken out. And this is how news works. So to say that, we're in a cycle of fake news would be a misnomer. Most news is fake. In fact, almost all of it is fake. Even the weather's fake now, because the weather is getting all their feeds from NOAA. There's no independent third party, hey, we're going to give you a different satellite view. No, it's all coming from NOAA, and everybody now has the same weather report, the same talking points, looking out for the same Doppler, looking at the same chemtrail patterns that are starting, knowing that they're coming, knowing that they're on their way, selling a meteorological version of reality with their version of fake news. So here's the story here. 3 CNN journalists who worked on a now retracted story about Russia and a top Trump advisor are leaving the network. Okay, this is not me sitting here as a Trump supporter. This is me sitting here saying, well, this is interesting. Because what's happening now is because there's such a level of antipathy, and we're dealing with duality and polarity, that things show up now. People... Not even people, it's the energy that addresses itself. Because if there's this kind of, like for instance with Obama, let's take the Obama administration. Obama was the least criticized president really in history. I mean, even George Bush got more criticism than Obama. And Obama got a free pass for a number of reasons, most of which, and I hate to, bang this drum here, was because he was the first black president. And there was going to be kind of this hands-off policy with Obama. And I remember, talking with Perry, what's his name here in Austin? I forget his name now. It's Perry Logan. I remember talking with Perry Logan, who is a full-blown Democrat. He loves the Democratic Party. And he was criticizing Obama. And this was back in, 2013? And people were yelling at him and calling him racist. And I didn't understand it at the time. Like, really? You can't just criticize the president? They're going to shout you down like that? And, it was quite prescient in a lot of ways. And it's like, wow. So there were these rules of engagement with Obama. You could not criticize him. Couldn't criticize him. So in that milieu, where is the contrast? You see, when you have things that are contrasting, when you have elements that contrast, what do you have? You have things that stand out, right? You have details, you have either color or shape, or whatever it is, In contrast, things stand out. When there is no contrast, where everything is monochromatic, nothing stands out. Nothing stands out. So with 8 years of Obama, what we had monochromatic journalism, monochromatic reporting. Nothing stood out. And if there was somebody on the right or somebody who wouldn't even be on the right, somebody just wanted to, crack the truth stick, it would not be allowed. It would be shouted down, and it was the apex in some ways of politically correct thinking. Okay, here in the state of contrast, that's what they should call the United States. The state. Speaking of states, I'm going to get back to this in a second. California's gotten all these travel bans and restrictions. And why doesn't California just leave? Why don't they just split? And I know that there are people that live in California and listen to this show, but it's like California's operating as its own entity, and what it should in a lot of ways. When I was living in California, I thought, well, man, we should just split. We got all this good stuff here. We got all this great food, all these great resources, all these smart people. Who needs the rest of the country? Really? I thought that when I was younger, and now it's starting to become a reality in some ways because they've got travel bans. They have travel bans. If you want to do business with the regressive state of Texas, and you're living in California, sorry, we're not going to compensate you for your flight. We're not going to compensate you for your hotel, and you may as well find a different state to do business with. All right, let's get back to this story here. So the 3 CNN journalists who worked on a now retracted story about Russia and a top Trump advisor are leaving the network. CNN is casting their departure as resignations in the wake of the fiasco, but the network has come under substantial criticism since apologizing for the story. The move would also help CNN's legal position in a case of a lawsuit. Anthony Scaramucci, can you do the fandango? Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening. Galileo Figaro. Okay, enough of that. Anthony Scaramucci, the Trump advisor who is the target of the story, told me he has no plans to sue. Well, that's big of him. He said he has accepted CNN's apology and wants to move on. But Scaramucci also told me in an earlier interview, I was disappointed the story was published. It was a lie. Lex Harris, executive editor of CNN's investigative unit, was the highest ranking official to resign. Thomas Frank, who wrote the story, and Eric Lichtblau, who edited it, also turned in their resignation. Lichtblau is a highly regarded reporter who spent nearly a decade and a half at the New York Times. The story tried to draw a link between Scaramucci and the Russian Direct Investment Fund, also known as the RDIF. Scaramucci was a Trump transition team member who has been nominated to an ambassadorial level post in Paris. The CNN.com article says Scaramucci back in January held a secret meeting with an official from the Russian fund. According to an unnamed source, Scaramucci discussed the possibility of lifting U.S. sanctions at the meeting, but Scaramucci told me that there was no secret meeting. He said he had given a speech on Trump's behalf at Davos, and fund official Kirill Dmitriev approached him in a restaurant to say hello, and they had a brief conversation with no discussion of sanctions. In the retraction, the network said the story did not meet CNN's editorial standards. The network is now requiring approval from 2 top editors before any Russia-related story can be published. Okay, we're banging the Russia... Okay, where are we now in the Trump administration? We came in on, January 20th, right? So we have in July 20th, it'll be 6 months. 180 days, right? 360 days? 365, but you know what I'm saying, right? So it'll be roughly halfway. It'll be the halfway point in the Trump administration. And we're still talking about Russia, and I'm still waiting for the big, fat, smoking gun, the smoking mortar in this case. It's not there. It's not there as much as these people would, because if it was there, they would have, it wouldn't be weak, unnamed sources. It wouldn't be weak unnamed sources. So this is what's going on. They're trying to continue to recirculate the fumes of a non-existent story. And in a lot of ways, what we're seeing, again, through contrast, the creation of fake news as this narrative, this synthetic reality, this false reality, news in general as a false reality that has become part of what we live our lives through. It's absolutely, utterly fascinating. If you go back into the early part of the 20th century, you'll see two key moments in the early part of the 20th century, and they both have to do with the Rockefeller family and the creation of news. Okay? The first big piece was that the Rockefellers created PR. They created PR. And I believe the person that was their PR person was a guy by the name of Ivy Ledbetter Lee. In fact, I know he is, not I believe. He was a Cancer, born July 16th, and he is the founder of modern public relations. And he was hired by the Rockefellers. And the reason why the Rockefellers hired him is because they had an accident at one of their oil refineries. And he wanted to get out in front of the accident and create the news. Create the news. Write a story. Mediate what happens. Versus the actual details, get in front of it, soften the events, get a few key witnesses that are on management's side, and come up with a solution. This is how, in a lot of ways, this is how news was started. I mean, of course we have newspapers, that goes back for a long time. But this is how the modern version of news had its little tiny point of inception. The other event which led to this creation of quote-unquote false news is the broadcast of War of the Worlds with Orson Welles. Because here we had an event on the radio. Radio was huge, right? It was absolutely, positively huge. And it was broadcast by Wells's Mercury Theater. And it was incredible in terms of its impact and how people responded to something that it was really existed in their imagination. And that was on October 30th in 1938, right around, of course, it's Halloween and ritual time of year. But what was fascinating about the War of the Worlds is apparently the Rockefeller family and Edward Bernays were also involved in the event. So the Rockefellers helped stage sort of these two pillars. One, which was a complete fake news event. And the War of the Worlds is fake news. And it was powerful and it was dramatic, and I think people who were looking at how they could drive people's attention through an event like that were salivating. They're like, oh my God, look what we can do. Look what we can do. Look at what we can create. And then we have Ivy Lee in the creation of public relations from the Rockefellers that allowed him and them get out in front of stories. So this is where it all sort of has its genesis during that period of time. On the newspaper side, you had the Hearst family, and the Hearst family were deeply tied into, of course, the pockets of the globalists at that time, which were the oligarchs and the robber barons from the East Coast, for the most part. You had people like the Stanford family who were kind of involved on the West Coast side. Anyway, and it was through the publication of newspapers in the early part of the 20th century, through the 20th century, which helped in many ways create this daily tableau of information, most of which was generally fake. And we've been living and swimming in a milieu of synthetic reality ever since then, and it's falling apart now. It's falling apart, and the reason why it's falling apart is because of contrast. Did we have contrast during Bush? Not necessarily. Bush 2, not necessarily, no. Sorry, wasn't there. Wasn't really there, because Bush 2 ran off the fumes of 9/11 for about 7 years. So there was you couldn't really criticize him, and he was such a doofus half the time that he almost didn't warrant any kind of real critical evaluation. Although every now and then, I swear to God, there were two of him. There was the evil Bush, and then there was the doofus Bush. And evil Bush was not friendly. He was very sharp and very critical, nasty, mean. And then the doofus one just went around patting bald heads. Right? That's what he did. Strange. Hi, strange. Anyway, but there's no contrast there. Really, no contrast during Obama. We've already covered that. What about Clinton? There was some contrast during Clinton. I mean, Clinton had... You were back during the Clinton administration, there was some intensity there. And ultimately it resulted in this impeachment, which was one of the strangest, I think, periods in human history, modern history, American history. Very strange. Very strange. Anyway. So these things are starting to fall apart now. There's another, this is the dossier. There's the fake Trump dossier. And keep your eyes on this. Keep your eyes on this, because Paul Sperry from New York Post is out with a report. He just put this out stating, the Senate is about to ramp up their efforts in investigating the birthplace of the debunked Trump-Russian dossier, the one that claimed germaphobe Trump enjoyed getting pissed on urinated on by Russian hookers. For Democrats, this might lead to mortal combat, fatality move if implicated. Criminal charges might rain fire upon them like the second coming of Jesus. Many of you still believe said dossier was in fact correct. To those people, dare I say, prove it. This is from The Real Fly. Interesting character on Zero Hedge. So they're going to get into the dossier piece now. We're starting to understand that the Russian collusion material is completely corrupt and created, synthetic. And then now we're going to see what's going to happen with this dossier. And at some point, I guarantee you, Trump will be vindicated. And people will understand that what we've been seeing for a long time has been completely artificial, if they have the eyes to see it. Now, the danger of that is, if Trump is vindicated, then now he gets to write the next chapter of news and history. And I'm not even sure if that's a wise decision either, right? Because this is the way things go. History is written by the victors. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds and what Trump does moving forward. I still think he's going to have a hard time with the American eclipse. And we're going to get into that on Sunday night show, and hopefully with my new computer setup and my new operating system and all the other goodies that I've spent a lot of time dedicating to, that live stream will be up and running and robust, and I apologize for how shaky it was on Sunday night. And it just was. So anyway, I just wanted to step in today and spend about 30 minutes with you talking about and dissecting this whole fake news piece, because now we're starting to see people fall. I mean, it goes back. I mean, look at what we had to deal with 9/11. And post 9/11, Valerie Plame and Joe Wilson and Yellow Cake and Najir and Colin Powell, who should be in jail, to be honest with you, for bullshitting that story. The rods, the yellow cake, I mean, they use that to sell the pretext to go to war in Iraq. Like, we're there. We are there because of Valerie Plame, Joe Wilson, Colin Powell, and the woman from the New York Times who's the reported the story. Judy, what's her name? I can't remember it now. But this whole disaster that's taken place in the Middle East and is metastasized, right? So we started in Iraq and it's just metastasized to Syria. By the way, Israel is at war with Syria. Now there's some news that's not fake, but you won't hear about it on the nightly news. You won't hear about it on your local news channel. You won't even hear about it on Fox. They're going to leave it alone. CNN won't touch it. But Israel is doing airstrikes in the Golan Heights. They want the Golan Heights. They want that gas. They want that oil. They want Assad to get the hell out. And what will be interesting is the longer that Assad maintains his position, his power, the deeper Israel is going to get into Syria. The more that they're going to get involved. And because most of the time they don't. They get other people to fight their wars. And when they do fight a war like they did in Lebanon, they got their asses kicked. So they're being smoked out a little bit here. They're going to start to take things into their own hands more, and we're seeing that. Okay, all right. Well, look at what's happening. And as long as they can paint Assad as kind of a brutal, oppressive dictator, people will give them some latitude until something goes wrong. Until something goes wrong, and until they're kind of fully vested and they've got troops on the ground, and I guarantee you, they get troops on the ground in there, and they're going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble because it is not a war that is based on anything other than psychological perversion and geopolitical realignment and the acquisition of resources. It has nothing to do. The only time war is really justified is when you defend yourself. That's the only time war is justified. Like, if you have to defend yourself, then it's time to go to war. Then it is time to go to war. And guess what? When you do that, you have the moral authority on your side. That's why the Lebanese were so powerful against the Israelis. What was it back in? 2000 and 10? I mean, that's why it was so. That's why they were so powerful, because they were on the side of moral authority. That's the only time war is justified, is to defend oneself. Outward acts of aggression and the acquisition and plundering of resources, which has happened on this planet for millions of years. I mean, let's not be Pollyanna about it. Everybody's done it. It's happened. Maps have been redrawn, lines have been redrawn, resources have been plundered. It's happened. It's gone on for a long time. Right? But the only time really it is kind of justifiable is when you defend yourself. It's like, hey, screw you, we've got our little piece here and you're trying to come in and take it, and guess what? We'll fight to the death for it. That's about the only time it's really justifiable. Other than that, especially now, they're just corporate wars. That's all they are. All right. Well, we've started off on fake news, and we wound up buried with our head in the sand in the Middle East. So let me see if I can give you guys something a little positive, a little positivity to hang your hat on for the rest of the day. I think it really comes down to a point in time, and I'll just give you, I put up a post on my website, just kind of detailing some of the internal things that I've been going through, which have been very powerful and pretty cleansing, but not easy. I'll be honest with you. And it's amazing what I'm getting back from people and the responses I'm getting. Not just responses of, hey, hang in there, I can feel your pain or your challenge, but there are other people who are saying, I'm going through things that are really difficult too. Right? Not just, hey, I'm putting my arm around you and I'm going to, try to lift you up a little bit here through, an email, which I really appreciate. But the other people are telling me that they're going through some really tough times. These are difficult times. These are challenging times. And I just want to, share, number one, my gratitude for the response from people. That was really fantastic. And on the other side of that, to know that we're all going through something. We're all going through something together, and it's not the easiest time to be on this planet. It's not. And I think what's going to be kind of the big challenge for us, in a lot of ways, and I know that I'm like this. Like when I've got a few extra dollars in my bank account, don't you just feel a little better? It's like, man, I can afford this. If I want to, I can buy this. Or if I want to, I can respond to some kind of emergency or situation in my life, and I've got the resources. And it's like, this is what people with money have. And they have a sense of confidence and generally relaxed attitudes and emotions that other people don't always have. Now, I've seen other people with money who are completely screwed up and neurotic, but that's a different discussion. So I think the real challenge for us is going to be, well, let's say we're able to come into a phase in our lives where things stabilize and we're feeling pretty good. And that can happen, by the way. That can happen. How can we feel good in a time where there's a lot of strife and conflict and contrast? How do we work that out? It's almost like having survivor's guilt in some ways. Because I think at the end of the day, what we want to aspire towards is a feeling of peace and love and joy and purpose, independent of external circumstances. I mean, that's really the test, isn't it? That is the test, to be in this world and not of it. And if one can get there, if one can, quote unquote, achieve that, then that's an amazing place to be. An absolutely amazing place to be. And if you got to that place, and maybe some of you out there listening are, that you're really happy and you're really content with your life, and the rest of the world and all of its chaos and confusion doesn't really matter and mean anything to you. Not to the degree that it might with somebody else. And if that's the case, really, I tip my cap, more power to you. And I think that that's really the place that we need to aspire to be. And I'm being straight up. Because when we're like that, we're out of effect. We are at cause. We're out of effect and we're at cause. But the whole idea, when you get to that place, or if you're in that place and you just don't understand it and everything else is just an illusion to some degree, and you're liberated and you get it, then it's about being able to own it and share it and be it unabashedly, and without attachment to ego. That is the place to be. And I hope that we can all have our kumbaya moment together and get there. And to be really thoroughly in a state of joy and purpose. That's where it's at. And it all takes, sometimes it's just little things, the little steps. Little steps. There's an I Ching that's dedicated to, small influence. It's called small influence. And sometimes you just have to have the small influence. Like when I kind of reordered my computer, I bought this computer and I got it from this kind of shady guy over on the other side of town, and I got it, and it had third-party software on it, and it had the highest, fastest operating system that Apple can have, but it was like not supposed to be on this computer. This computer is close to 10 years old. It's a big, nice desktop with a big screen, And I had to literally go to the Mac store. And it's one of those moments, right? It's one of those moments in time that's kind of synchronistic. You go to the Mac store and they say, well, you got third-party software on here. You can't download anything because of this. It goes through the third-party software and it gets all hung up. I'm like, well, what should I do? Well, we basically have to do a hard reset and, remove everything. I'm like, okay. All right, there we go. There's the meta moment. Remove everything. And so they wiped the entire computer, so now it went back to this snow leopard, which is an antiquated operating system. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back in time, and I'm going to go get iLife from 2009. I'm going to grab it, and it's got all the things that I need. It's got GarageBand, and it's got iMovie. It's got all these things. I can load it right up on here, and I got a nice clean copy off of eBay, and I slammed it into the computer, and guess what? It didn't work. Like, oh, well, I guess I can't go back to 2009. That's not happening. So I thought about it, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I thought, okay, I'm going to figure out if I can get a higher operating system. And I did. I found El Capitan, and then I started to download all these more current Mac programs, GarageBand, iMovie, and voila, I'm up to speed for the most part. And it is small influence. It's just little things like that, where I was about to ready to just sell this computer and get it out of my hair because I felt like it was useless. Now it's got a lot of use, and hopefully it will be useful on Sunday night when we do the live stream. Small influence. If that's where you are, one little victory at a time. In baseball, when a player is in a slump, instead of hitting home runs and doubles and triples, you just want to get on base. A bunt, a single, and you get another single, another bunt. And next thing you know, you're seeing the ball better, and bang, you're out of the slump. So if you're struggling out there, if you're having a difficult time, just get on base and just try your best to stay on base and get your swing on over time, and you'll get out of your slump. Small influence. All right. Let's wrap it up for today. We took you down the fake news path as results in a image, so to speak, although a false image of reality, and perhaps the fallout. And the reason why it's there, of course, contrast. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to save what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back here tomorrow, 24 hours from today. Have a fantastic Tuesday. I'm out.
Okay, let's do it.